So today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing South Carolina. So South Carolina, really, if you're a fan of them, there's not that much to get excited about this season because they weren't very good last year, and uh, that's when they had Spencer Rattler at quarterback, and now he's gone, and he was good for them at quarterback. He was very accurate and at times he looked like an elite quarterback, but he was a five-star recruit, and overall, he didn't do as well in college as you would have thought, being a five-star recruit. But still, he was one of the best quarterbacks that South Carolina's ever had. And their offensive line was horrible last year because Rattler was sacked 40 times, and they were almost as bad at running the ball as Colorado was because their line was so bad. They averaged under 3 yards per run and under 100 rushing yards per game. And I've not really seen anything to make me think that their offensive line is going to be so much better this year. Maybe not any better. Now, I'm not saying it can't be better. I'm just saying that it's probably not going to be much, if any, better. But don't tell me in the comments you just hate South Carolina and you don't do any research because I'm an Ole Miss fan, so I have no real reason to hate South Carolina. South Carolina is only hated by Clemson, and probably not even much by them because they're never as good as Clemson. Uh, and the schedule that they've got is pretty tough. In the non-conference. They've got three games that should all be pretty easy wins against Old Dominion, Akron, and Wofford. Old Dominion will be tougher than the other two, but still, they shouldn't have much trouble in any of those three. Mm. But then they're going to need three other wins to get to a bowl game that they didn't even do last year with Rattler at quarterback. They're probably not going to be near as good at quarterback this year. And that's going to be hard to find three more wins on this schedule. Mm, in the conference, they start on the road at Kentucky. That's going to be really tough for them to be able to win. Kentucky doesn't have the best home field advantage, and they're not the most talented team, but they're going to be a decent team that's well coached, like they've become to always be now in the SEC. Mm, and then they play LSU. Now, I know this is at home, and South Carolina has a decent home field advantage, and LSU probably isn't going to be quite as good as they were last year, but still, I wouldn't give South Carolina much of a chance to win this one. And then they get their first week off before playing Ole Miss at home, and uh, this isn't really a good time for a week off because Ole Miss, I think, is just going to be too much for South Carolina. South Carolina doesn't have much of a chance in that game. And then they play on the road at Alabama. If Nick Saban was still at Alabama, I wouldn't give South Carolina any chance. But even without him, I still wouldn't give them much of a chance. Alabama may not be really good, but they're still going to be pretty good. Probably a lot better than South Carolina. And Bryant Denny is still one of the toughest places to play in college football. Um, and then after that, they play on the road at Oklahoma, another one that they don't have much of a chance in. Oklahoma's a really tough place to play too, and they're probably going to be pretty good. Really, these three in a row here, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma, that's one of the toughest three in a row this season because those are three teams that are all probably going to be in the top 15 this year. And then they get a second week off before playing A&M at home. Uh, this will be one that they'll have a chance to win. Texas A&M, I think, is probably a little better than South Carolina. They're for sure a lot more talented, but uh, they aren't expected to be great this year. So maybe home field advantage could give South Carolina enough to pull an upset here. And then they play on the road at Vanderbilt. So I know South Carolina has owned Vanderbilt like all the other SEC teams have, and uh, Vanderbilt is horrible, and they have the worst home field advantage in the SEC and one of the worst in college football. And South Carolina is better than them and should win this game. But they will have to be careful in this one because South Carolina, I don't think, is going to be a whole lot better than Vanderbilt this year. And then they play Missouri at home. So this is one that maybe home field advantage could mm, give them a chance to pull an upset in. I think Missouri's better than South Carolina. And if you look back at the history, you'll see that South Carolina hasn't even been able to beat Missouri when Missouri's been bad. And Missouri is expected to be good this year. Now, I don't really think they're going to be top 10 like uh, I'm seeing on the internet, but probably top 25. Mm, so likely a loss for South Carolina, but not a for sure loss. And then to end the season, Mm, I put the wrong team on here. That's supposed to be at Clemson, their in-state rival. And I know mm, South Carolina beat Clemson the last time it was played at Death Valley, but that's because Spencer Rattler had one of his best uh, games of his college career, mm, and now he's gone. And mm, Death Valley is still one of the toughest places to play in college football, and Clemson's not as good as they used to be, but still quite a bit better than South Carolina. So very likely a loss for South Carolina. Uh, mm, mm. So now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. If you want to see more about how I do point spreads, you can watch my Ohio State video. I explain it in that. But games in the green are games where I think South Carolina will be favored to win by a blowout, 20 or more points. And there's two of those, Akron and Wofford. And games in the blue are games where I think uh, South Carolina will be favored to win by double digits, 10 to 19 points. And there's one of those, Old Dominion. And games in the purple are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a touchdown, so 6 to 9 points. And there's one of those, Vanderbilt. And games in the yellow are games where I think South Carolina will be about a touchdown underdog, so 6 to 9 points. And uh, there is three of those. Kentucky, Missouri, and Clemson. Uh, and games in the gray are games where I think South Carolina will be about a field goal underdog, so 1 to 5 points. And there's one of those, Texas A&M. And games in the orange are games where I think South Carolina will be a double-digit underdog, but not a blowout underdog. So 10 to 19 points, and there's four of those: LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Mm, mm. So Akron, South Carolina should be favored in that one by about 30 points, and they should be favored by 30 something points against Wofford. they should destroy both of them without a problem. And Old Dominion, uh, I think that South Carolina will be favored by 17 to 19 points in that one. Should be a, a three-score favorite, but I don't really think they'll quite be a 20-point favorite. They might be, but uh, Old Dominion isn't an FCS, and uh, they're not a horrible team. I know they're not Power Four, but South Carolina is supposed to be one of the worst teams in the SEC this year. Uh, and Vanderbilt, I think South Carolina will be favored by 8 or 9 points in that one. That would be in the blue if it was a home game. Now, I know Vanderbilt doesn't really have a home field advantage, but South Carolina does. And mm, so Texas A&M, that would be in the yellow if it was a road game, but because it's at home, I think Texas A&M will be favored by 4 or 5 in that one. And Kentucky, I think, will be favored to beat South Carolina by 6 or 7 points. That'd be in the gray if it was a home game uh, for South Carolina. Uh, and Missouri, I think they'll be favored by about 7 against South Carolina. That'd be in the orange uh, if it was a road game. And then Clemson, I think they'll be favored by around 9 points against South Carolina. And LSU, I think it will be about a 10-point favorite against South Carolina. And then Ole Miss, I think they'll be favored by 2 touchdowns, around 14 points against South Carolina. Uh, then Alabama, uh, the spread in that one will probably be 17 or 18 points. And then Oklahoma will probably be favored by about 2 touchdowns, 14 against South Carolina. And uh, that will be it with this video. And please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. And I'll be back soon.